Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. Today we're tackling something truly fascinating, maybe even a bit strange. Acquired Savant Syndrome, or ASS. Where someone has a serious head injury, maybe a stroke, and suddenly develops these incredible skills like genius-level math or amazing artistic talent.
Exactly. But we're not digging through standard medical journals today. Our main source is, well, it's pretty out there. It's a transcript from an investigative hypnosis session, and it claims to lay out the energetic reasons behind how someone suddenly becomes a savant.
Right, so we've got this really detailed, kind of wild theory involving trauma, energy flows, even claims about ancient genetic tinkering.
But our job here is twofold. First, we're going to unpack these extraordinary claims, the mechanics of the trauma, this idea of latent potential bursting forth. But, and this is crucial, we also have to look really critically at the source itself. We have another piece of information that questions how reliable any info from just one hypnosis session really is.
Okay, yeah, that's going to be key later. But first, let's dive into the theory itself. Starting with the subtle mechanics, the energetics of that initial traumatic event.
Okay, so the session describes three distinct energetic images happening right after the physical trauma, say, a blow to the head or a stroke. The first one is pretty straightforward. Just a dark image, like a shadow, representing the physical wound itself.
Okay, that makes sense. Physical damage leaves a mark. But the second step sounds weirdly energetic.
It does. It's described as an energetic contraction around the injury site. So the space between the physical cells actually shrinks. It gets rarefied.
A contraction. Wouldn't you expect, I don't know, chaos or expansion after an injury?
You'd think so, but here it's framed as protective, almost like the system's trying to tighten up, wall off the damage.
Okay, so why? Is it just defense?
It's described more like an energetic cleanup. The contraction acts like a broom, sort of sweeping out the dead cells, the debris, while protecting the healthy ones nearby. It's like a detoxification, clearing the way, creating this energetically clean space.
A clean space, ready for something new to come in.
Precisely. That leads to the third image, a huge sudden influx of what's called superior quality universal energy. The idea is the trauma basically blasted open a bigger valve, allowing this high-grade energy to pour in.
And this energy is described in a very specific way, right? Conscious energy with bits. What does that even mean?
Yeah, it's unusual phrasing. It implies something more than just raw force. It's like intelligent, organized energy, containing information, maybe. It's described as acting like an energetic plaster, helping the body actually create new nerve cells,
Right.
supporting neurogenesis.
Right, the physical repair.
Yeah.
But what makes this energy so special compared to, our everyday energy?
Well, the crucial point in the transcript is that this energy is supposedly pure. It's new, unstarted, and critically, it's unfiltered. It doesn't go through the person's usual mental or inherited programming. It bypasses all the existing filters.
Okay, hold on. If this pure energy rushes in after such traumas, why isn't everyone who has a bad accident suddenly a math whiz or a concert pianist?
Good question. Because the energy needs something to work with. It doesn't just create skills out of thin air. It produces these specific, complex savant skills only when it encounters something already within the person, something latent. The source calls this the subliminal part.
The subliminal part. Can you translate that a bit? Is it like the subconscious or?
Think of it more like your deep, innate potential, like the factory settings of your abilities, before life and experience layered programs on top. It's called a depository of specific traits and abilities. So the potential has to be there already, lying dormant.
Ah, I see. So the new energy acts like a catalyst, activating something that was already there, but hidden.
Exactly. The source suggests these new abilities are like half inherent potential from the subliminal part and half driven by this new external, unfiltered energy.
And how does that connection happen? There's talk of a veil.
Right, the veil. It's described as the energetic barrier or space between that deep subliminal self and your everyday physical body and consciousness. The trauma and the energy flow that follows supposedly causes this veil to get thinner. It creates better adherence between the potential and the physical.
So the injury effectively punches a hole, or at least thins out the barrier, letting the genius part get closer to the surface.
That's the idea. The subliminal part can then participate more actively, as the source puts it. It can express its forte abilities through the physical body much more easily.
And that explains why the location of the injury might matter.
Precisely. The trauma needs to conquer. It needs to align energetically with where those specific latent abilities are held or expressed within the person's system.
This raises a huge question then. If we all supposedly have this subliminal hard drive of potential, why is it latent? Why is there a veil in the first place?
Yeah, why are we not all walking around expressing genius potential all the time? According to the source, it's because of successive filtering and programming built up over, well, maybe many lifetimes, or just through life experiences. This programming reinforces familiar patterns, limits potential, and basically pushes these innate abilities deep into latency behind that veil.
Okay, so the trauma in ASS is like a violent breaking of those individual filters. But the source then suggests there are bigger systemic filters affecting everyone. Is that where this goes next?
Yes, exactly. The focus zooms out from the individual event to alleged systemic programming affecting humanity as a whole. The session describes a core energetic system involving two main zones. The middle chest area linked to heart, emotion, and the upper head front area, personality, thought.
Okay, head and heart, classic duality. And the programming involves separating these.
That's the claim. That the key filter, supposedly inserted during some ancient genetic alteration event, was precisely the separation of these two zones, forcing a split, a dualism in our consciousness, and weakening their natural connection.
Wow. So duality isn't just a philosophical idea here. It's presented as an engineered energetic block.
From this perspective, yes, it describes red energy impulses, like electrical signals, going from the head down to the chest. They're supposed to meet the emotional body there and transform cleanly into feeling or emotion. But because of the separation,
They don't integrate properly.
right, emotions that aren't processed or integrated properly break away from the main flow.
And these broken bits, they cause problems elsewhere.
They supposedly settle or sediment in other parts of the body. The source mentions hands and feet specifically as these dark encapsulated remnants, creating imbalances, blockages.
Okay, in this filtered, imbalanced state, the source claims it's not just an accident of evolution.
No, according to this transcript, it's actively maintained. This is where it introduces the idea of external entities.
Right. We need to flag this clearly. We've gone from brain injury mechanics to ancient aliens and energy harvesting. This is all from that single session source.
Absolutely critical to remember. We are relaying the information in the source, and it claims these entities maintain this state partly through things like manipulating food, polluting it, lowering its quality, to decrease our well-being and generate suffering, which is framed as a low-frequency energy they feed on.
Induced suffering is food.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was something else mentioned. Plasma.
Another massive claim. Plasma here is described as life energy or ectoplasm, primarily found in blood, human and animal. The source states these entities are highly interested in it. They absorb it directly for sustenance. Apparently, they have trouble storing it or immagazining it themselves.
Okay. So manipulation, energy feeding. What's the alleged end game for these entities, according to this source?
The ultimate goal described is further genetic modification pushing towards transhumanism, essentially. But the aim isn't necessarily enhancement for us. It's to increase the filtering, reduce abilities further, create a more obedient, compliant population. The source literally says the goal is people like the average people we have now, only more so.
And the most extreme method mentioned for achieving this total filtering.
Cerebral implants, chips. These are claimed to cause a total separation from the subliminal self, locking down that potential completely. It supposedly leads to the atrophy of unused neural pathways, that whole use it or lose it thing, essentially simplifying human consciousness.
Okay. We've just laid out an incredibly elaborate, interconnected narrative from cellular changes to cosmic entities and microchips. It covers so much ground. But now we absolutely have to pivot to that critical analysis. How much weight can we actually give to any of this, given the source?
Right. This is where it gets, well, potentially quite deflating for the theory itself. The second source we have directly addresses the reliability of getting information this way.
And the main point is?
The core critique is that information from one single hypnosis session like this is considered highly contaminated, distorted.
Contaminated by what? The hypnotist? The person's beliefs?
All of the above, potentially. The source uses this analogy. Trying to communicate complex stuff underwater, maybe in different languages, using gestures that mean different things in each culture. There are just too many layers of interpretation and potential misdirection. The median itself is noisy.
So, if one session is inherently unreliable for factual data, how do investigators in this field determine anything?
Well, the source is very clear. You need repetition. Massive repetition. Only information that consistently appears across a very large number. They suggest thousands of independent sessions can be considered potentially reliable. You're looking for the tiny signal that cuts through all the noise, the consensus points that keep showing up again and again.
Thousands of sessions.
Yeah.
Okay, and what's the estimate for how much actual reliable data emerges from that massive effort?
This is the really stark part. The estimate given is that the reliable, consistent data is probably lower than 3%, maybe just 2 or 3%.
Wait, percent. So the other 97% is potentially just.
Garbage information is the term used in the critique. Or, perhaps more accurately, information highly specific to that client's subjective experience and therapeutic needs in that moment.
Wow, okay. Let's let that sink in. Everything we just discussed, the 3 steps of ASS, the veil, the subliminal self, the filters, the entities, the plasma, all of it came from one session. Which means, based on this critique, it falls squarely into that 97% zone of potentially unreliable contaminated information.
Statistically speaking, yes, that's the necessary lens here. The critique emphasizes that the purpose of the info in a single session often isn't even about establishing objective fact. It's used more as a vehicle of movement, a symbolic narrative constructed to help diagnose or resolve a specific issue for that individual client. The details serve that function. They aren't necessarily universal truths.
So where does this leave you, the listener? We've explored this incredibly detailed, dramatic theory about trauma unlocking latent genius.
And placed it against the stark backdrop suggesting the method used to get that theory makes it highly likely to be, well, inaccurate or at least heavily distorted.
It's a fascinating paradox. But maybe there's still something valuable here.
Well, think about the core concept again. Trauma in ASS is described as breaking filters. Even if the details of how or who put the filters there are unreliable, the very phenomenon of ASS, the fact that sometimes profound abilities do emerge after the system is disrupted, could be seen as a hint, a dramatic pointer towards the latent potential that might be there, suppressed by something.
So if the subliminal self is the source of genius and filters are the block, maybe the takeaway isn't about needing external trauma.
Perhaps not. The session itself mentioned the mandatory work of increasing consciousness.
Right.
What if that's the way?
Right. What if we can learn to consciously thin that veil ourselves, bypass the programming without needing a catastrophic event?
That feels like the more constructive path, doesn't it?
Definitely something to think about long after this deep dive is over. Thank you for joining us.